And if you stay in the mist, you gon' be soaked. So listen up, cause this hair of the dog, what's real, what ain't? Is this the fog or smog? Cause there's a difference when you breathe it in. So don't let the corporate media take you for a spin. This that morning show, they put you in the know. So I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, go, go. Yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Hair of the dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the storm, we out here.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Friday morning, and I hope everything's going well with you and yours. So we're going to have a slightly shorter show this morning because our lovely and talented co-host, Andy, already tried to abandon us and shirk his responsibilities by going camping. But we are fortunate enough that we can reach him anywhere. So good morning, Andy.
Fuck technology. God damn it. If I'd known you were going to find me, I would have went to bed before 3.
Right. So Andy is glamping, and that is his camper in the background. And we can find him anywhere. Yay, technology. So good morning, everybody. Hey, good morning, Mike. Welcome to our Friday show. So it's a little more casual today, and obviously we're not as well put together because some of us stayed up till 3 in the morning. So imagine that. But
would you believe me that I was camping if my hair was neat and my face was shaven?
yeah, no,
See?
no, not at all. Not at all. So
And I've got my walk of shame T-shirt because this is the one I was wearing yesterday.
well, we won't get into that. But speaking of shame, let's get into voter shaming, Andy. This is my favorite topic because for me personally, every time somebody tries to vote shame somebody else, it's I was just not raised that way, right? It was all about your vote is precious and private, and anybody who tries to intimidate you, that's a vote. That's voter suppression. So
Of course.
yeah, so
Yes, your vote is important in our democracy. That every voice counts, but only if it agrees with mine.
that's exactly right. And I'm trying to explain to people when I see these conversations going on, particularly on social media, it's just to me indicative of an entire population who doesn't understand how representational democracy works or what the Electoral College is. So I wanted to cover a little bit of that and why, and I posted this publicly on my Facebook page. So if you want to read exactly what I wrote, have at it. It's public. But real quick, it's the Electoral College is what actually casts a ballot for the office of the president. Right. So we're not talking about Senate or House races. We're talking about the presidential race. So I wanted to put a couple graphics up to kind of explain where we are. So here's the Electoral College map. And on this pretty blue map, you can see the number of electors allocated to each state. So for example, Colorado has 9, Arizona has 11, California has 55, Illinois is 20, right? Pennsylvania has 20, New York has 29, Florida has 29. So Andy and I had talked about how if I was going to run for president, my friend who's from Canada said if I was going to run for president, I would win because I would just campaign in New York, Florida, Illinois, California, and Texas and say, all of you will not have to pay federal taxes if I'm elected, and I would win. And he's right, because look at these vote totals, right? So for example, if you are a progressive and you live in Illinois, like I do, the chances of this state going red or even purple, 90% chance against that. And that's because we have so many voters in high population areas like Chicago. Chicago has 6 million people. So if those people get out and vote, then my one vote is not going to sway the outcome of the state, right? So we just had the Supreme Court ruling on faithless electors because we had some electors during the last presidential election vote against the way their state went. And the Supreme Court just says that, yeah, we can hold them accountable and there will be consequences. So it further incentivizes these electors, Illinois has 20, to vote the way the state votes, right? So if I'm a progressive and I'm not happy with the ticket for Biden and Harris, because they are now during a pandemic showing their true colors and still catering to the donor class and avoiding any conversation about Medicare for all. If that's my line in the stand, and it is, I can happily vote for anybody I want and not affect the outcome. So in my mind, what that says is I can vote green for the candidate who most closely aligns with my own ideologies and not affect the outcome of the state or the way the electors for Illinois vote. And by my one vote, I can help a third party achieve the 5% threshold. And therefore, I can help them break the duopoly. So, when you are going out,
because currently all of the rules that are in place right now do not allow that to happen.
That's exactly right. Like in my own state, if you wanted to run for an independent for an office, say county board, right? And everybody should be running for an office. If I wanted to run as a Democrat, my signature requirement to get ballot access is between 12 and 48 signatures. So that means I have to get those signatures, legal signatures on a petition, turn them in, and then I can become a candidate for either a Republican or Democrat. If you wanted to run independent or for the National Progressive Party or any of these, it's 1,200 signatures are required for you to get your name on the ballot. And then, of course, you have both parties who are going to challenge you. So your 1,200 needs to be 2,400 to avoid that challenge and stay on the ballot. If I actually wanted to run as the Movement for People's Party or National Progressive Party, not only do I have to do this for myself, but I have to get 5 other people willing to run for county board to get those same signature levels in order for us to be a recognized party in the next cycle, right? So
all during a pandemic when you're supposed to be social distancing and not campaigning door to door.
That's exactly right. So this is how the law works, and it's not the same in every state. We literally have 50 plus countries is the way to look at it, instead of one country with one set of rules. And the two parties in power right now make sure that they are just the only ones in power. And of course, they're going to have and Mike Mike, who lives in my county, is correcting me. He said, not only do I have to get 5 other county board members, but I also have to get somebody to run for chair and clerk and treasurer and all of these things. So I have to fill an entire slate. So that's how it works in Illinois. And it works similarly in other states, but not totally. So in order to break the cycle, I myself will be casting a vote for the Green Party candidates for Howie Hawkins for the president. If that is not your cup of tea and you don't understand how the Electoral College works, great. Go find out. Go find out what you can and cannot do. I happen to have that luxury here in Illinois. If I still lived in Ohio or somewhere else, I might make a different decision. But because I live here, and the way I understand how the electors work, and I understand the presidential process, get it. So for the rest of you, I want to make this case that if you are still not happy with voting either red or blue, or you don't want to vote green, or you're so disgusted, I get it. But you need to remember, and we've talked about it here so many times, we had Warren on, we have all of these progressives who have won their primary races. They just won their primary. They are now on the ballot for November. So Buttar, who's running against Pelosi in California, is one of these. If you don't vote down ballot then all of the fight that we have won so far over the last 2 years is gone. Okay?
Right. Right. Because it's all about momentum at this point.
That's exactly right. So we have enough primary winners to flip the House from Democrat to progressive Dem, and we are working on flipping the Senate blue. So please,
Right.
if you just cannot do it on that top race, skip it. Just skip it.
Right.
But
And
vote down.
the one example to just to illustrate all of this, which perfectly illustrates it, is Arizona.
Mhm.
Right, when we had candidate was Dan.
Oh, are you talking about Dan Whitfield? He's in Arkansas.
Arkansas. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
But yeah, he's running against Tom Cotton, right?
Mhm.
And so what Cotton, like when Brandon calls him fuck Tom Cotton, but what fuck Tom Cotton has done is the money that he's raised for his campaign has partially gone to the local politicians
Mhm.
in the ridings that where he is, basically to pay them off, right? And so because they've accepted money from him, they've been able to basically get rid of all of the Dem candidates,
Yep.
right? One way or another. The reason Dan Whitfield is still involved in the race and fighting for it, although they're trying to get rid of him too, is because he's an independent, but also because he knows how the game works and he knows how it's played, right?
Mhm.
So there's a very good chance that this independent can easily beat Tom Cotton in Arkansas if he actually can get on the ballot.
Oh,
I don't think I haven't heard if that's been resolved yet or not. I don't think it has, but
it's
that's
yeah.
the
He's
perfect example of what you can do if you know how the system works.
yeah. And that's exactly right. So Dan Whitfield is posting updates. He's still campaigning all across the state safely, and his case is going through the court, and there is precedence to get him on the ballot already. So he is fighting tooth and nail for that, and that is a cause that progressives all across the country can get behind, because all we need to do is support the independent and progressive cause in Arkansas to help him get on the ballot. So we
Right.
do have
Exactly. And as progressives, we don't care what party their name is attached to. It's
Right.
policy that drives this, right?
Right.
We got enough people in Congress and the Senate that have the proper policies, right? It doesn't matter what they call themselves because they're all going to vote together as a block.
Oh, that's exactly right. So I want to put up this map, and I've talked about it before again, but it's so going back to the vote shaming, this one I think is just brilliant, because when you're spending your time trying to vote shame somebody, you're actually doing something that is counterproductive to your cause, right? So we have this bucket of likely voters, and then we have this tremendous bucket of people who don't vote at all. So rather than spending your time vote shaming people online, where it's easy and comfortable and you can feel like a king of social media, get your ass to a phone bank and start reaching these people who don't vote at all, right? So this is the statistics. This is why Hillary Clinton lost. It was not Bernie voters. It was not third-party voters. It was the Electoral College. And the irony in this is, I'm going to quote Hillary herself. When Bernie lost the primary in 2016, her snarky ass, which I'll give her credit for the snark, she said Bernie knew the rules. He knew the rules. And then it turned around to bite her in the ass in the general election because she lost the Electoral College. And what did she do? She wrote a book, she went on tour, crying and whining, whatever, like she didn't know the rules herself. So you
blaming Bernie at every turn.
and that's exactly right. So in this particular, this is data. Data does not lie. This is from the election, and said as a percentage of eligible voters, Clinton received 28.4% of all votes. Those are everybody who cast a vote in that race. to Trump's 27%. So she barely eked out enough of the popular vote. But the did not vote population was 44%. That's 44% of all eligible voters did not vote in that race. And then the other statistic that I think is vital to this is Trump received 2,046,000 more votes than Romney did in 2012. But Hillary received 70,000 fewer votes than Obama did in 2012. So this is where the Electoral College comes in, right? So if you look at this map, you can see that Iowa and Wisconsin went heavily for Trump. Colorado, Minnesota, and then a bunch of blue states on the East Coast went for Hillary. But I'm going to put up this Electoral College map again, and you can look this up, use the Google machine. If you're running for president, I want you to look at this map here where you've got Florida, Texas, California, Illinois, Minnesota, all of these places where it's really heavy with Electoral College votes. I want you to think about where Trump is campaigning right now.
Yep.
And where he's sending in federal troops and where he has cut off federal funding for necessary things like PPE for COVID, and where, and this is what we're going to talk about here in a minute, where they're really heavily pushing against mail-in ballots.
Right.
So,
and as well, as a side note, a lot of places where Hillary didn't think she even had to show up.
Right.
Because she thought that, oh, well, that state's in the bag. That's how the arrogant, neoliberal arrogance of that whole thing. I don't have to go there. They're just going to vote for me. Not thinking that the people of that state are says, well, where the fuck is Hillary? She didn't even bother to come here. Why should we vote for her? She doesn't care about our state.
Yeah, and
those swing states, the Rust Belt states, where she didn't show up, that cost her the Electoral College.
Yeah, well, it's not just showing up, which you need to do, show up and say that we matter, but you need to show up with policy in hand. It is your job as a candidate, and I'll tell you, as a candidate myself, every time I went to the door, even for basic petition signatures, and signing a petition is not a vote, it's just to get on the ballot. Every time, absolutely every time somebody said, well, why should I sign this for you? What are you going to do? What's your platform? So I had to be out there selling my ideas from day one. And as a candidate, you have to do the same thing. So my concern is Biden and Harris, their number one thing is not Trump. And that is not enough
That's
people.
Not just their number one. That's their only thing. That's all. That's the only policy they have. We're not Trump.
Right.
Which makes for a very inexpensive poster.
Well, it does. The fewer words and pretty pictures. So Lee, who's joining us this morning, says if you have to cheat to win the primary, you won't win in the general. And that is a very good point, especially when we had millions spent by the Democratic Party to make sure that certain incumbents won. They were spending money against the squad to forward corporate challengers, and then they were spending money against incumbents who had progressive challengers. So there was a ton of cash for an organization that says they're broke and everything else to spend in a primary election. And I'm going to call back to Louisville, where you had one polling place open for 600,000 people. No Democrats in the party said anything against that. They were quiet as church mice. And I'm going to point out here again, another group that is being super quiet in something that actually matters. So I'm going to transition just a little bit to the post office. So we talked about Trump, who's okay, maybe the dude is insane. Maybe he's high all the time. I don't know. But whoever's working on his campaign is certainly paying attention to those Electoral College numbers and mail-in voting. So we saw earlier the all-out attack on the post office. What Trump has done is he took people who had been promoted through the ranks as postal workers, part of the union, moved out and replaced. Once you get to a certain level of management, typically you're not part of a union, so they didn't get the union protections. They were just summarily walked out. And he replaced them with someone else who has clear ethical violations and conflict of interest because he's supporting the privatized mail companies, and these are UPS, FedEx, things like that. What most people don't realize is those companies remain profitable because they contract with the post office for last mile delivery. And what that means is if you live in a rural area or you live in some place that's hard to get to and they cannot make their metrics, they will hand off that DHL package or whatever it is to the post office to deliver it to your door, right? So
absolutely, this is the whole thing is completely insane. I do the virtual shake my head every time people start talking about that. And you think about, all right, listen, the post office is a service. It's a federal service, like the police department, like the fire department, right? Like any government department. It doesn't lose money, it costs money, right? But it's a service for the people.
Right.
They don't say, well, how much money did the military lose last year? Because they've got to be profitable. They can't be profitable if it's a service. It costs money to have a service.
Right.
And it's a perfect example of a socialist thing in your country.
Oh, absolutely. And it goes even further than this, right? Because it is the only service that is actually called out and enumerated in the U.S. Constitution. So let me go ahead and pull that up here. So in the Constitution, and this comes from Cornell Law, it talks about how the post office was seen by the founding fathers, patriots all, as a vital and necessary service nationwide. And nowhere in any of the documents and letters back and forth as they were discussing this did they ever mention profit. Never once did they mention profit. And what they were talking about was the service that it would provide. So that is the first one. Now, the other thing that I find is really interesting is in the rules, these are federal constitutional rules, there's this little bitty clause, and you can look this up for yourself. It's 18 USC, as in United States C Code 1701. It says, it makes it a crime for anyone to knowingly and willfully obstruct or retard the passage of U.S. mail. Okay, so what does that look like? Well, if you're a candidate and you're running for office, one of the first things that you learn is you cannot put your literature in a mailbox. You cannot put your literature hanging on the flag outside of a mailbox because you may be obstructing the postal worker from doing their job. So if that in and of itself is a crime, how much more is it a crime for the federal postal master, who is subject to federal law, to remove the sorting machines and all of the processes to lay off people, to just dissuade everything from the vote? How much more is that, subject to this federal law? I'm sorry, my dogs are freaking out. I'm under attack by squirrels, apparently, so ignore the dogs.
Damn you.
Yeah.
Damn you, squirrels.
So of course it's distracting me. I'm like, shut up. But Mike posted a comment here, and it's also equally funny. It says, ethical violations and conflict of interest in politics. He says, I'm shocked. Well, not that shocked. So, and we see this throughout the Trump administration, where he's putting in like oil barons in charge of the EPA. drain the swamp, he refilled the swamp with even worse critters than what we had before. So same things happen to the post office, but here's what I find shocking, right? So all you vote shaming people, if you are so keen to for moral superiority, I want to redirect your efforts to something positive. What I would suggest is that you go out and you use your talents and your time to direct it to the unions. And the reason I say that is this. I went out and I've been looking at the AFL-CIO and all of these union organizations, and what they have not done is come out in support of the Postal Workers Union, and that is their job. So you have these councils all across the country. Like Chicago, there's a union council. In my county, they meet here and they trade back and forth every other month. All of these unions get together and they work together and they talk about issues and things like this. None of them have come out in support of the Postal Workers Union. So if you feel the need to shame somebody, I need you right now, number one, to call your senator. And we'll post a link and show you how to do that in case you don't know who your senator is. And where these councils are, those are the people that you need to be talking to. Because if you don't understand the Electoral College, surely you understand voting. And if you're going to participate in this particular election, you're going to need a mail-in ballot. And what we've seen is clerks all across this country are mostly Republican, very few are Democrat. So your ballot actually matters. And the key person to make that happen is your postal worker. So they put up a meme today that I thought was just brilliant, and I want to share this. So this is from the union. This is from UPWU.org, and I'm going to post a link because they have actually gone the extra mile to beg for help from you, and you are not paying any attention. So I want to make sure that you at least get this information here. So if you go out to the upwu.org/save post office, you will see all of this great information. I want to share one of these videos that they had from a veteran that I thought was a critical component to what you might consider in this fight to save the post office. So here, take a listen.
My name is Skyly Hynden, and I am a U.S. veteran from the U.S. Army. I served from 2000 to 2005. I have rheumatoid arthritis. I have a cluster of other diseases that come along with it. I also suffer from anxiety, amongst other things that go along with that. I depend fully and completely on the United States Postal Service to deliver my meds, and I can tell you when they're delayed, it makes our lives miserable. Some of us are only functionable because of these meds, and any type of stopgap in taking them can cause some serious repercussions. So I am fighting for the United States Postal Office to stay open, and please share my story.
Great, excellent. Oh, thank you, Mike, for posting that link. Really appreciate that. So this is the message that's supposed to be getting out, and what is not happening is the unions are not stepping up to support their union brothers and sisters, and that is a shame. So we're going to go ahead and shame the unions and post the messages and the links to your local council so that you can send them a message too. At the same time, you're contacting your senators asking for relief for our post office. So this is not about a political right-wing, left-wing. This is patriots, because we've already shown you here that it's about the Constitution and all of these things that are going on right now with the elections here. So I think we may have lost Andy.
All right, can you hear me still?
Oh, yep, there you go. There you go. Hi,
Yeah.
Andy.
All right, I'm still here. I'm just trying to. I have to probably jump off here soon because it in the when they delegated meals, I'm making breakfast for everyone, so I have to go up and start that.
Breakfast should be a
Unfortunately, I have to.
Bloody Mary if you're out camping. Just saying. So, well, real quick, one other point that I want to get to, and the deadline is today for this, is Pennsylvania judge. So in Pennsylvania, they took Trump to court over what he's doing with their post office there. So good on you. But a judge in Pennsylvania gave the Trump campaign today as a deadline. So they have to provide actual proof of voter fraud or election tampering on behalf of the post office and mail-in ballots today. So far, they haven't provided anything. It's easy to talk about things. It's easy to post information that, you know, you can just say any damn thing you want, apparently. But in court, you have to actually prove it. And that is what's happening right now. So we're going to keep up on this and see what the Trump campaign actually says about, you know, this proof. But I suspect they're not going to be able to come up with anything in particular. So those were some of the key points I wanted to get to, and of course I'm being invaded again by squirrels. So Andy, that was all really I had that I wanted to talk about this morning. I know you got to run. Do you have any last minute words that you want to say here?
But about vote shaming, I just wanted to just say that how reprehensible it is that the one thing that irks me the most is when people say, if you don't vote for the Democrats, so if you don't vote Biden or Kamala, you're actually voting for Trump, right? And these are all people that are supposedly self-proclaimed progressives that say, you know, we can't have just a two-party system. We need a third party. Yet when you say, well, I'm not voting for Biden. Oh, well, then you just voted for Trump. You don't realize how ironic that statement is. If you believe one thing and then you're saying that, well, because you're not voting for them.
That's exactly right.
Thing I think you can do as a in a democracy when you vote, right?
Right, exactly. And I think people are susceptible to that because we are so woefully uneducated about our own democracy and how things work, which is why I wanted to bring up the Electoral College and you know, don't take my word for it. Go look it up and see how this actually works. See why there are conversations about maybe getting rid of the Electoral College, where it came from, what the purpose of it actually is. And then while you're at it, since we had so many conversations about the DNC's platform, did you see the DNC's platform from 2016? Do you know where to look? Did you bother to look it up? Because we had a really great progressive platform in the DNC since 2016. One candidate lived up to it, and that person wasn't even a Democrat. So while you're fighting over things that really don't have any sway whatsoever, we're ignoring the things that actually do. For example, the post office. For example, our clerk races. In my particular county, and I've said this before, my county and others in the collar counties of Illinois, you had the Democratic Party themselves, leadership, openly sabotaging their own candidates in clerk races to allow the Republican candidate to take over. Does that make any sense? Right? So
what to me.
Yeah, what you're seeing at a national level with the DNC openly inviting and courting Republicans has been happening in state parties for a long time, particularly in Illinois. So we know that they laugh about it. The Democratic Party leads and the Republican Party leads, that they openly run Republicans as Democrats, and it's all fun and games to them. So now we're seeing it at a national level, and you are feeling the effects of it based on what's happening in your local elections, who can vote, and polling places closing. So you need to wake up and pay attention. And if you're just going to resort to vote shaming on Facebook, social media, you are part of the problem. So with that, we can get out of here because I need to go yell at dogs now, apparently. So,
and apparently shoot squirrels.
yeah. Well, yeah. There's that. So, okay.
And I'm going to go make some brunch.
Yeah, that sounds lovely. You enjoy that. Enjoy the rest of your camping trip, and we'll completely leave you alone till Monday morning. So we will be back here bright and early on Monday because that is DNC Day. That is the first day of the DNC convention, and we're so looking forward to the 60 seconds that AOC has been granted while we're having Republicans speak for, 20, 30 minutes. This is your Democratic Party now, so...
That could be the most interesting minute of the entire thing. So I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. All right. So with that, we're going to get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Please stay safe, and we'll see you back here Monday morning.
Take care.
The dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Spitting the facts, how it's supposed to be. Hair of the dog, we keep it in G. Whoa.